Today's episode of Ask Me Anything was brought to you by our merch. That's right, we have merch now, and it's beautiful, so you should definitely buy some. Use promo code SoloFam to save 10% on your order all weekend.
Crazy mother.
What is going on, Solo fam? My name is John Solo, and this is Ask Me Anything. Why are the lights so harsh? Why is my forehead so shiny? These are the questions we won't be answering today. I want to start this episode off by apologizing that it's not a messed up origin episode. I know you guys have been waiting over a week since the last one, so I'm definitely overdue. Trust me when I say I've been hard at work on the next episode. It's just that it's about the Lion King, which I know everyone thinks is just based on Hamlet, but it turns out that's not totally true, and the real messed up origin is way more complicated than you thought. In addition to that, I just wanted to give the story the respect it deserves because it's one of my favorites of all time, Disney or otherwise, and I know I'm not alone in that because there is quite a bit of hype coming from the Solo fam about this episode, so I just want to do it right. Imagine if after running this series for almost a year and a half, I did a really shitty episode on one of the best Disney stories ever made. That'd be pretty disgraceful, right? Yeah, the pressure's on. Anyways, I didn't want to leave you guys without a video this week, so I asked you for some questions and you gave me some awesome ones. I feel like I should give you a warning that because this video was so last minute, I didn't have time to write a script. I don't normally script these AMAs out super specifically, but I will keep an outline just to make sure I don't forget anything when I'm giving my answers because I tend to ramble and go off track. I just gathered 13 of your questions because this is the 13th episode, and I think a lot of people would say that's unlucky because they're superstitious, but I'm not, and I wanted to double down. But yeah, no script or outline means pure unadulterated John Solo, and that's not something you see very often, and once we do this, we can never go back. So, wanted to give you a warning. Anyways, I say it's time we dive into the questions because my intros are always way too long. Just make sure you smash that like button because it means a whole lot to me, especially when we get the likes on these videos that aren't messed up origins. And when you're through with that, you're probably already subscribed, but make sure you ring the bell next to the sub button and then put show all notifications or whatever it is. I've got all 13 questions here on my iPad, which I'm making a point to include in the shot because it's brand new. I'm really excited about it. And it was really expensive. Didn't make a dent, but it was really expensive. Question 1. What's your height? I'm 5'10" most of the time, but on a good day, you'll find me at 5'11". So in other words, I'm just tall enough to not be considered short. And thank God for that, because I was one of the shortest people in my class up until 6th grade, and around that age, you're starting to wonder, like, is this gonna be how it is forever? Am I always gonna be one of the shortest guys in the room? Am I always gonna be at waist level smelling farts? Hope not. Question 2. Are you from the East Coast? I noticed you have an accent of some sort, and I've been trying to figure it out. Believe it or not, I'm actually from the Midwest United States, a little town in Bufu, Illinois, with a population of 1,500 whole people. So what that really means is that I shouldn't have an accent, and I'm ready to admit that it's really weird that I talk with one. But at some point in high school, I think around sophomore year, I just started throwing some spice on the words and phrases I was using, because I realized that throwing accents on things kind of made it sound funnier, or at least changed the way the message was delivered. Like if you're telling a joke in an East Coast accent, it might sound a little funnier than a boring ass Midwest accent. So I started talking like that when I was trying to be funny. It started out super forced and like it was very obvious I was talking like this, you know what I mean? But at some point that dial cranked back from 11 to like a 2 or 3, and it just became part of how I talk. I understand that is not normal, but if it makes my jokes funnier, I'm gonna stick with it. Which of the messed up origins really messed you up while you were searching it? And question 4, do you have bloopers? Do you guys put any effort into spell checking this? Do you have blooper if you making funny mistakes while filming? If so, can you pretty please upload them? Well, to be honest, even though the stories themselves are messed up, none of them have really messed me up in any significant way, but I will say the one that was the biggest shock to my system was The Fox and the Hound. Like, I didn't even know that that was based on a book before I started the research process. I had no idea, and then I figured, like, it's Fox and the Hound. It's probably gonna be a typical, I don't know, just a normal fiction book about a fox and hound being friends, like the movie. But I was not expecting that at all. So when I read those last few lines where you-know-who gets blasted in the dome, I was like, what the f***? Like, this is undeniably horrible. How did this become a Disney movie? As for the blooper question, though, unfortunately, I don't save any of my footage after I'm done using it. After a couple months go by and I know I'm not going to need it anymore, I just delete it all to save hard drive space because video footage takes up a lot of hard drive space. No joke, literally every time I do that, I think, this is such a waste. You could at least make a blooper reel out of this stuff, but To be honest, my mistakes aren't that funny. It's pretty much just me saying a long string of sentences, messing up, or my voice cracking on the last 2 or 3, and then me cursing out like that. You heard that? That's not funny. It's annoying. So I just move on. Moving on to question number 5. What made you want to look into the backstory of Disney movies and everything else? A lot of you guys have asked this before, but I've never answered it because I just don't really have an interesting answer. I don't remember specifically how I thought of the idea because I thought of it a long time before I actually executed it, like years and years. I do remember the idea came to me sometime during my sophomore year of college, so like 2015, I think that is. Now that I think about it, my second semester sophomore year, I took a world lit class, and that class sucked, but the first unit was all about old school fairy tales. So if it came from anywhere, it was probably there. That in combination with the fact that I was doing videos on Disney at the time anyway and wanted to find a way to expand. The reason I didn't act on it for the next few years was because in December of 2015 is when my videos started blowing up for conspiracy theories and Star Wars content, and my shift focused towards that more. And then by the time I graduated college, I was so sick of talking about conspiracy theories and watching movies with that kind of mindset. So I knew I needed a different topic, not to mention that the theories and fun fact videos weren't getting that much traction anyway. And let me tell you, I am so glad that I waited, because if I had started doing this my sophomore year of college, these videos would have been terrible and I would have been done with them by now. Question 6. Do you enjoy reading? If so, what's your favorite book or genre? As you should be able to tell from the nature of my content, I love reading. The very first thing I do every single morning after I wake up is read for about a half hour to an hour. I didn't read that much recreationally throughout high school and college because you have to read so much dumb shit throughout high school and college that I just didn't have the time or energy. But pretty much immediately after graduating, I picked up the recreational reading habit, and since then I've read a lot of nonfiction. I don't necessarily have a favorite genre, but I've read a lot of nonfiction. I've got a couple of books here that I've read recently. This was my first fiction book in a while, Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy. It's an old school Western and by far the most violent, messed up book I have ever read in my entire life. So if that's the type of thing you're into, check it out. But be warned, like actually be warned, because it's really graphic. I've got another one of my favorite books here, 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. If you're watching this video not feeling fulfilled, like your life doesn't have any meaning, not happy with the journey that you've taken across this planet, check out this book. It's 12 chapters, so I read it once all the way through, and every month I reread another chapter because there's a lot of really good information in here and I don't want to forget it. I've got Rebel Without a Crew by Robert Rodriguez. It tells the story of how a 23-year-old filmmaker with $7,000 became a Hollywood player. Definitely good for the entrepreneurial filmmaking type like myself. The Rise of Victimhood Culture is also really good. It talks about the origins of social justice warriors and where those self-righteous freaks came from. I've got the Disney version, which is basically just a biography of Walt Disney. There's a lot of biographies about Walt Disney out there, but I'm really happy I started with this one. It was really good. Highly recommend. How to Argue and Win Every Time by Jerry Spence. Not the kind of book that you're thinking about. It's not necessarily about how to dominate people in arguments. It's more how you can settle conflicts with both parties getting what they want. It's just a negotiating book. It's not arguing per se. And for my final recommendation, How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan. It's a book on the science of psychedelics, the history of psychedelic drugs, how they're used in medicine in modern day America, stuff like that. Moving on to question number 7. We're doing everything but flying through these. Have you ever taken the Myers-Briggs personality test? And if so, what is your type? I actually have taken the Myers-Briggs test before, so let me just pull up my results. According to Myers and Briggs, I am of the ENTJ personality type, also known as the Commander. What does ENTJ actually stand for? Good question. It stands for extroversion, intuition, thinking, and judgment. Obviously. Duh, can't believe you guys didn't know that. A brief description, ENTJs are natural-born leaders. People with this personality type embody the gifts of charisma and confidence and project authority in a way that draws crowds together behind a common goal. ENTJs are characterized by an often ruthless level of rationality, using their drive, determination, and sharp minds to achieve whatever end they've set for themselves. Perhaps it is best that they make up only 3% of the population. Oh, Oh, would you look at that? Some famous commanders are Steve Jobs, Gordon Ramsay, Harrison Ford, all winners in my book. Margaret Thatcher, Whoopi Goldberg, my boy Jim Carrey, that's pretty cool. Tony Soprano, one of my favorite characters of any franchise, series, movie, book, anything of all time. And the last one I recognize is Francis J. Underwood, the main guy from House of Cards, if you haven't seen that. He's kind of a psychopath, more psycho than I would say I am myself. Question 8, if you could be in any fairy tale story, what would it be and what role would you play in the story? I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of old school fairy tales are pretty messed up, so there's not that many I would want to be in. This might be kind of a cheat code answer, but I would probably switch places with Aladdin from Aladdin and the Wonderful Lamp because he's got infinite wishes. Question 9, what do you think of all the unnecessary, and in my opinion very bad, remakes of classic Disney films that have been taking place in the theaters recently? I'll keep my answer short and sweet here because I want to launch a series in the near future where I analyze some of these live action movies and compare them to the original stories and the original movies as well. But in a nutshell, I hate them. I try not to. I go into the theater with an open mind every time, but I hate them. Maleficent was garbage, totally ruined the original Sleeping Beauty story and the entire message behind it. Beauty and the Beast was pointless, almost a shot-for-shot remake, so why even bother? That's all I'm gonna say on the topic, but definitely look out for those videos in the future because sometime after Dumbo, I'm gonna make my first one. Question 10, which Disney villain should be given their own backstory? To be honest, I don't think we need any more backstory movies, but if we were gonna make one, I'd say give it to Hades. Like the Maleficent movie totally ruined her character and changed her from being the embodiment of pure evil to somebody that you felt sorry for, someone who was a victim of an overly ambitious man. Unlike Maleficent, Hades doesn't have a backstory that you would have to twist and distort to make him look like a good guy, because he's really not a bad guy. The Disney movie made him look way worse than he actually was, so we could look into his backstory, see how he was given the reins of the underworld, how he reacted to it, and why he was so frustrated with Zeus by the time the first movie's events took place. It's the perfect idea, right? But instead we're gonna get Maleficent 2, the Mistress of Evil. I don't know how they're gonna make her evil, being that they wrapped her in sunshine and rainbows in the last film and just said that she was misunderstood, the poor thing. Regardless, I'm not going to see this one unless I get a gift card. Question 11 says, do you think you may run out of stories? And question 12 says, when you run out of these stories, what are your plans? Creepypastas? In theory, yes, I am gonna run out of stories eventually because there are a finite amount of stories for me to cover, but that doesn't mean I'm gonna run out of content. People have asked me that since the beginning though. I remember getting comments saying, this is a really cool idea, but what happens when you run out of stories? Because there's only so many for you to talk about. And while that is true, there are way more stories to talk about than you think. But on top of that, I've got 2 more series launching this year that explore totally different realms of fables and folktales. There's Mythology Explained, which is immensely complicated, and I'll probably never run out of ideas for that. There's Urban Legends Explained, which I'm going to be launching in the second half of this year. So in addition to the few series I've already got going, and the dozens and dozens and dozens of ideas I've got for those series, I've also got 2 more series going to be launching in the future and 2 more series after that. So no, I'm not worried about what happens when I run out of stories. As for creepypastas, I'll probably never talk about those because I have no interest in them whatsoever. And now for the 13th and final question. If you had to choose one Disney movie to be adapted like its original source material, what would it be? I would say definitely Hercules and definitely animated the exact same way. There's only a few things in this world I love more than cartoon violence, and an animated, accurate depiction of the Hercules legend would be full of it. And with that question, I will end today's AMA, and I'm gonna end it on a dime. Thank you all so much for watching this episode. It means a whole lot to me when you check out my videos that aren't messed up origins, because it makes me feel like I have something more to offer than just that. Makes me feel like you actually give a shit about me, you know? That being said, I'll be seeing you all next week with one of the most anticipated Messed Up Origins episodes to date. As always, don't forget to smash that like button if you haven't already. Subscribe if you're not, which if you're watching this and you're not subscribed, props to you. That's pretty interesting, pretty impressive. Oh, and follow me on social media. I got the handles right in front of you and links, this is weird, and links in the description. Until next time, my name is John Solo, and remember, John shot first.